What is going on, guys? We have an interesting story today. Ex-Trump lawyer Cohen to testify publicly before Congress. The reason I selected this article to read is because I've recently had some discussions with people and been kind of surprised by the take that they have on this issue regarding the evidence against Trump and where it stands as far as the legality of it. We'll go through this and kind of get into those details as we go. This article is from Reuters, Washington. Reuters, President Donald Trump's former personal attorney Michael Cohen said on Thursday that he agreed to testify publicly before Congress panel on February 7th, as the U.S. House of Representatives Democrats began kicking off numerous investigations of Trump and his business arrests and his administration. Now, it's important to realize why this is happening at this time is because the House has recently switched controls from the Republicans to the Democrats, and the Democrats, as part of their platform, have vowed a slew of investigations concerning this. And so one of the tactics that either party will use is calling before witnesses to propagate their beliefs or their talking points in order to castigate the other side as evil. This goes back all the way to Roman days when senators would do this in the public platforms and slandering their fellow members of the Senate or even in the Senate directly itself. So, anyways, we'll see as we continue on. Cohen said in a statement he had accepted an invitation to testify from Representative Elijah Cummings, the leading Democrat in the House, Democratic chairman of the House Committee on Oversight and Government Reform. I look forward to having the privilege of being afforded a platform with which to give a full and credible account of the events which have transpired, Cohen had said. Now, Cohen has had every opportunity thus far and are able to do this with the media, who have just put this everywhere that they possibly can, and stretching the details actually beyond what he's even said. But as time has gone on, he's continued to escalate his claims as more and more data has been released by him and his legal team in order to try to gain increasing leniency in his sentence that he received earlier, which we'll get into in a bit. So Cummings said the committee has no intention of interfering with ongoing criminal probes. He said, to that end, we are in the process of consulting with special counsel Mueller's office. No interest in interfering with ongoing criminal probes. So the investigation is still ongoing, but they're not going to interfere. They're just going to interview the primary witness in it at a congressional level and then broadcast that to the rest of the United States. But that's no interference. That's the epitome of hyperbole right there. And you can bet if the Republicans did this, the Democrats would call them out on it. So special counsel Robert Mueller for many months has been investigating Russian interference in the 2016 U.S. presidential election, possible collusion between the Kremlin and Trump's campaign and potential obstruction of justice. Now, to be fair to Trump, this has gone on from basically the inception of his presidency with a wide-ranging investigation by Robert Mueller that has gone far beyond its initial jurisdiction of what it was set out to do. And that's really the problem with special counsels in the first place, is that, you know, once they claim that they think that they have a lead on something, you can't really tell them no. And so despite Manafort not having anything to do with it and Flint not having anything to do with it, those crimes were still prosecuted by Mueller because there's really nobody to put the brakes on the investigation except for Trump. And if Trump were to do that, it would look as if he was doing something wrong. And, you know, just to be clear, I fully think that Trump should not do that. If he did, I would be squarely against it and rightly condemn the action should he try to shut Mueller down. But on the other hand, at some point, Mueller's investigation does need to end, and it's stretching on into, I think, its second year of investigation. I think this is one of the longest investigations that's ever occurred in the presidential arena as far as the length of investigations. So it's just getting to the point of ridiculous, because it has presented nothing in order to thus far conclude that the original claim or objective of the investigation is substantiated. So, and we'll go into that later. So Russia has denied any sort of U.S. intelligence agency findings that meddling in the 2016 campaign, while Trump has denied any collusion with Moscow and calling Mueller's probe a witch hunt. The investigation has clouded the Trump presidency. Kind of what I went into a little bit earlier as far as, you know, how long it's been going on. It's just incredibly hard to operate under a just continuous, unending, ubiquitous investigation that permeates everything in the administration that you could possibly do, and potentially reach out or attach itself to anybody in the administration. So, as far as this little bit about Russia having died, the reason that they included that, because that was the original mandate of the Mueller investigation, to investigate these claims of Russian collusion with Trump. And it's just morphed into all these other things that have nothing to do with that. And, every conviction that it's occurred thus far, except for with Cohen, have things to do that were completely outside and unrelated to Trump. And even when the Michael Cohen, his initial indictment was not related to Trump activities. They were related to lying and and tax evasion. And then after that, kind of in a deal that was arranged with Cohen, which incidentally coincided with a leniency agreement for these details, aspects that or claims were made by Cohen that there was relation to corruption within the Trump campaign. And we'll go into that in a little bit. So Cohen was sentenced in December to 3 years in prison for his role in making legal hush payments to 2 women to help Trump in 2016 in violation of campaign laws, and for lying to Congress about a proposed Trump Tower project. Now, that's not entirely correct. The initial claim was due to tax evasion and illegal lying to Congress and the FBI. Now, they include this making illegal hush money payments to 2 women to help Trump in 2016. Now, it's only a violation if he used campaign finance in order to do it, and that's very ambiguous of whether he did or not. And even if he did, then you'd have to have clear direction from Trump instructing him to do that in order to attach it to Trump. As a campaign finance lawyer, and him making those payments, he's responsible for what he does. He can't do an illegal act and then say, "Oh, well, Trump told me to do it," unless he has direct evidence or collaborating witnesses in order to support that statement, especially after the fact when he's trying to use it for leniency in his sentencing, from dropping it from about 5 years to 3. So Cohen once said he would take a bullet for Trump, who called his former confidant a rat on Twitter in mid-December. Well, yeah, after the sentencing, when he releases that sort of information and saying that, I would totally call him a rat too, especially if the information is false. So House Intelligence Committee Chairman Adam Schiff said he hoped to schedule a closed-door hearing with Cohen later to discuss the Russia probe. I don't think it should be a closed-door session. I think that if that sort of information is being what's claimed and he has evidence of it, that should be presented to the American public. If it's confidential in nature as far as intelligence, then that's another matter, but that wouldn't be held before Congress as a whole. Lost our webpage here. So, but it does say that it's being held in the Intelligence Committee briefing. So I can see that if he's wanting a closed door hearing, public relation in order to intelligence data, I could understand his reasonings for that. So Mr. Cohen has expressed an interest in telling his personal story in open session, and we welcome his testimony before Committee on Oversight and Reform, Schiff said in a statement. So this is really what's interesting in going back to Elijah Cummings' statement, and that he doesn't want to interfere in an open probe investigation. Now, I totally agree that he should have that platform in order to speak it to the Congress and the American public as a whole, which, again, he's had through the media and thus far hasn't made the case clear as of yet. But, something different through the Congress, I'm not really expecting him to do. I'm basically just expecting him to restate his talking points and then, basically try to make a mass appeal for the same thing that he's been saying without presenting any additional evidence, and the Democrats to make a heyday out of it while they've got the power to do such. So after Cohen was sentenced, Lanny Davis, an attorney who has been advising him in his media strategy, said Cohen wanted to speak publicly about Trump, and he has certainly done that. I look forward to assisting Michael to state publicly all he knows about Mr. Trump, and Mr. Trump, this sort of thing just, it's a small thing, but it just really gives you an insight into the people who are saying these sort of things, that they can't bring themselves to say President Trump. We wouldn't accept such things in the past on other presidents, and we'd call those people ignorant or racist or despicable human beings, and yet there's this double standard that exists with Trump, and it's kind of amazing to me. So, and that includes any appropriate congressional committee interest in the search for the truth and the difference between the facts and the lies, Davis said in a statement at the time. Cohen, Trump's self-described long-term fixer, pleaded guilty to the campaign. Well, I think that any lawyer would be termed as a fixer at that level of your legal problems. If you have legal problems, you need a lawyer, and they would be, by definition, a fixer. So they use this term in here, and you can just see kind of the way that it's placed, and the whole article is slanted, is kind of this way in order to slander and subvert your view of Trump in order to make you think worse of him. But it's interesting to see that this kind of, the way that they quote people selectively and the terms that they use and the way they insert them and the things that they omit. Again, it's just the mass media in general that does this, but it never fails to surprise me that no matter how much we identify it or how used to it people get, the media just seems to continue rolling with it. And I guess most people buy it, but it's a sad state of our democracy and the intelligence level of the American people to see it so propagated throughout our news. At a hearing last August in federal court in New York, Cohen testified that Trump had directed him to commit a crime by arranging payments before the 2016 election to two women who said that they had engaged in extramarital affairs with Trump. So this goes back to the tape that was released, and I don't know if you've heard the tape or not. I'll see if I can find a link to it and drop it down below. But in the actual evidence that he presented, you can't hear about what they're discussing the payments are for, or who they're with, or why they're being made. And so all you hear is kind of a indistinguishable, garbled terms of what they're paying with is kind of what's the dispute's over. And this is kind of what the media focused on when they were released, of whether it was being paid with cash or if it was being paid with check. But there's no idea what this is related to, and so there's no real evidence of a crime there, regardless of whether they're paying with cash or check. And the media just kind of glossed over this as if it wasn't a big deal, but there's no actual evidence in the evidence that was presented. It's evidence of nothing. There's no crime there, Kojak. And so, if he's presenting more of that kind of thing, then, there's nothing new here. So, the adult film star Stormy Daniels, whose legal name is Stephanie Clifford, was paid $130,000. The former Playboy model Karen McDougal was paid $150,000 by Cohen. So, and that's not illegal behavior. Now, if you use campaign finance in order to do it, then that's illegal. But you have to have proof that you were directed to do such by Trump if you're claiming that he's the one who originated the crime, if you made out the check. So Cohen made out the check, and he's the one who paid them, so it's Cohen who committed the crime. Now, and again, saying that you were directed to do something by somebody else, you have to actually have evidence in order to make that claim. So I do think that Trump bears some sort of responsibility, as he is overhead of that campaign that initiated those funds. But again, when you have a designated person in order to manage this for you, ultimately at the end of the day, it is their responsibility when they are making out those checks and managing those funds. So we'll go into a little bit more here. This is an interesting story by the Washington Post concerning Michael's sentencing, the 3 years of prison crimes committed while working for Trump. And it's interesting to see how the development of the story, this was published on December 12, 2018, you'll notice that they say while working for Trump, because they can't actually claim committed by or at the direction of Trump. There's no evidence that's been presented by that. And yet the media has constantly used this subversive kind of twisting of language to try to insinuate it, and so much so that the average person that I talk to, particularly those who are anti-Trump, have the impression that this is the truth. This is what happened, that Trump committed the crimes and we've got evidence of it, and he's just waiting for his day in court in order to convict him of it. That's not the case. We don't have anything that actually proves that Trump did it. We have a lot of insinuation, and we have a lot of claims by people, but with no collaborating evidence. And we have claims by people, I should add, who have incentive to make such claims, not just purely monetary reasons, such as the mainstream media, but also people like Michael Cohen, who have jail time sentencing and leniency deals depending on them making those claims. So it's very reasonable to be skeptical of these sort of insinuations and these claims without any other additional evidence coming to light. So in this article, a New York federal judge on Wednesday sentenced President Trump's former attorney Michael Cohen to 3 years in prison for financial crimes of lying to Congress. So these financial crimes were personal crimes in part of him using tax evasion and the campaign finance contribution crimes of actually supporting paying these women using campaign contributions. So, as a disgraced fixer, apologized, but said he had felt it his line of duty to cover up the dirty deeds of his former boss. Well, you can claim that now that you are facing jail time, but that really doesn't present any sort of indictment or criminality on Trump's part. So Cohen made an emotional apology of U.S. District Judge William H. Pauley III taking the responsibility of what the judge called a venerable smorgasbord of criminal conduct. crimes that included tax violations, lying to the bank, and during the 2016 campaign, buying the silence of women who claimed that they once had the affair with the future president. Again, not a crime if you're using private funds to settle out of court or pay somebody for their silence. There's no criminality in that. So the downfall of a hard-charging, high-profile lawyer has potential consequences far beyond Cohen, as authorities have alleged that Trump directed him in violation of campaign finance laws. Facing his day of reckoning, Cohen laid plenty of blame on the president's feet, and his lawyer said that he would continue to cooperate with the ongoing special counsel investigation of the president's campaign. This is really what for me kind of makes me really skeptical of somebody's claims, is when they present some sort of evidence that somebody did some wrong, they're supposedly coming entirely clean, and they seem to have taken the complete 180 against the person that they're working for, and yet over time those claims and those crimes progressively increase in severity and grandiosity of your claims as it becomes increasingly necessary to build a stronger case against them. It's a key mark or hallmark of a liar to hear somebody say something, and then if the person that they're telling to remains unconvinced, to go beyond what they originally said, to lay more claims or more additional evidence that they come up with out of nowhere. So you go and you tell somebody you don't believe something, so, oh, well, there was also this, that you didn't know about. Say, well, okay, that's still not enough to convict him. Well, there's addition to that, there's also these details, that I forgot to mention earlier. Any sort of time that happens and we see that playing out, there's reason to go, okay, well, why didn't you say this beforehand? And that's exactly what we're seeing in Cohen's case. And again, none of the new details that he's come out with have necessarily made any sort of connection to criminal activity with Trump, which actually makes me more likely to believe him, because if you're going to lie and you'd think you'd just get it over with and say the detail that's incriminating if you had something like that. It may be a play of time, and this is what other people are speculating, that Cohen is trying to appease the people sentencing him with these kind of frivolous details, trying to make a connection that appear to have criminality but don't actually include anything, in order to run down the clock on his sentencing, in order to just basically run out the deal for leniency until he's granted it and he can walk scot-free. Who knows if that's the case, but by all appearances it seems to be something like that, because we still don't have anything that's concrete enough to say, okay, well, you did it, especially when Cohen, from all evidence that we've gathered thus far, recorded or had recordings of conversations with the president. He kept a slew of documentation on his conduct with the president, tracked conversations, wrote notes about it. Everything that we've seen so far, would indicate that if something was blatantly illegal, that he would have overwhelming proof of it, and yet nothing exists thus far presented to the public, at least, showing anything like that. And, members of the House Judiciary Intelligence Committee obviously don't have those sort of details, as they're still, interested in talking to him, interviewing him, and getting information concerning the Russia probe. If they had those details and he had already disclosed that via the Mueller investigation or to the FBI agents or anyone else, those details would be passed on to the Intelligence House Judiciary Committee, and apparently they haven't. So anyways, continuing on with this article, I just wanted to show that, the initial claims that the Washington Post have made and kind of how the media has skewed it since then, and, with still no additional details coming out of the Reuters article that they've made or others that I've read. One other thing that I really wanted to present on this was a article that was this was published in 538. Not familiar with that, but the research that it's presenting is solid, and that's really what I want to get at. And so this is from the Cambridge University Press. For instances talking about informants, which is what Cohen has become, and these are not just regular informants, these are incentivized informants who are either compensated financially or given leniency in their own sentences and criminal conduct. So this is what the data has shown. For instance, out of 330 people exonerated by DNA evidence in 2015, 24% of those convictions involving informant testimony, according to research by the University of Virginia law professor Brandon Garrett. An earlier study in Northwest University School of Law Center on wrongful convictions, whose focus just on the capital cases, turned up even higher rates. Of the 111 death row inmates exonerated between the reinstatement of the death penalty in 1976 and 2004, 45.9% of those cases involved informant testimony. According to both Garrett and the National Registry of Exonerations, the use of incentivized informants seems to be more common in capital cases than it is when the stakes are lower. Well, these stakes are very high concerning the presidency and jail time for a very influential and wealthy lawyer, and who presumably is familiar with this kind of data and these kind of laws surrounding this. And so it's just very interesting to look at that kind of data and say, okay, well, these are statistics. It's almost a 50% chance in some cases concerning the death penalty that this information is wrong, just going off of the incentivized informant. And so we look at cases like the presidency and Michael Cohen, and there's a lot of room for skepticism, particularly in the way that it's been presented and the way that the media has handled it, and just the history and research going off of what we have concerning other incentivized informants. So hope that was informative. Hope you guys enjoyed the presentation. Let me know what you guys think, and give me a little bit of feedback if you would. I enjoy doing these types of articles, but at the same time, it's a little bit of a, I don't know, it's a little bit frustrating to have conversations with people who look at this as an open and shut case and thinking that we have all this evidence against somebody and that somebody's committed crimes based off of the way that the media has presented it, which is supposed to inform us as citizens and individuals concerning what's going on in the nation. And yet when you dig into it and you look at the details, that information is not present. It's not clear cut, and there's really a lot of reason for skepticism to be there. So my expectation, when we get into this, is to find that he won't present any new information to Congress, but we'll see. I'll try to see if I can find time to cover that, and we'll review that kind of information when we get to it. So anyways, take care, guys, and I'll hope to have another video out soon.